Hello, Jacksonites. Happy birthday to me. Yes, today is April 16th, 2021, and I am now officially 24 years old. Which means I've been on this channel for, or at least I've been doing videos for 5 years now. Yep. Oh, here are we getting some haters. Shawnee Boy is already here. Today, me and good old Trevor Boy.
Howdy, everybody.
We'll be discussing one of the most infamous installments of the entire Alien and Predator franchise, with the much revered and much hated, for lack of a better term, judging by Shawnee Boy's reaction of "fuck this movie." Alien versus Predator.
It's only revered in certain circles. Anyway, continue.
Alien versus Predator Requiem, or just simply AVPR, which is what I like to call it, or just simply Requiem. Yeah, this movie. Okay, so Alien versus Predator Requiem. Trev.
Okay, so kind of like with the first movie, I was a bit aware of it leading up to it. So, like, I visited the official site and whatnot, and I think I might have even kind of followed articles about it. Nothing too in depth, but I did like the first movie, so of course I was looking forward to this one. It was coming out on Christmas 2007.
Which is the weirdest fucking time to release an Alien versus Predator film.
Well, especially one that ended up like this. It was very interesting, and this actually was the first Alien or Predator movie that I saw in theaters. Oddly enough, well, it actually makes sense because I would have been too young to see any of the others whenever they were out. I either wasn't alive or, again, I was a little kid. This was the first one I saw in theaters with my dad because he is an Alien and Predator fan. At least certain entries in the franchise. He's not like a hardcore follows it through all the way. He'll definitely tell you if he thinks something has run its course.
Like with Terminator.
On the other hand, I always come back to the fountain for more, hoping that it will, taste pretty good, for lack of a better term. So anyway, whenever I saw this, I Am Legend, with Will Smith,
hate that movie too.
The Last Man on Earth. It's a version of The Last Man on Earth, which Vincent Price and Charlton Heston did before. The remake, the Will Smith's version, was coming out around this time. And that had my dad's interest as well. Me, I was kind of iffy on it, but I ended up liking it. We saw both movies in around Christmas time, 2007. We made sure that the show times didn't conflict, and we would have enough time to go to the two different theaters. And we saw I Am Legend first, and then we went and saw Requiem. And it was actually not a bad theater experience, all things considered. This made me realize that fans and general audiences sometimes have different. Not priorities, but values when it comes to their entertainment.
They perceive things differently.
Yeah, the fans, we tend to be, we have very specific expectations, and most of the time, Joe Public just are hoping to be entertained somewhat. And it did seem like, whenever I saw this in theaters, that the audience was entertained. I mean, the jokes in this movie aren't great. I mean, a lot of them, the few that there are, I think, miss more often than not. But there were a few that some casuals laughed at, like the two guys that own the shop, being stoned and saying that terrorists were in Gunnison. That got a laugh.
That was supposed to be funny?
Yeah, it was supposed to be funny. Darcy saying that the government doesn't lie to people, that got a laugh. Just little things here and there. So it's funny. Again, what general audiences will react to. But anyway, it was a favorable theater experience, and I did like it. But as we will elaborate soon enough, there are some major flaws working against this movie. But I guess I'm a glutton for punishment to an extent because I would keep on watching it. From that point on, I actually think I've only seen the theatrical once, and I've watched the extended version, which is better. There are some nice little moments added here and there. But as me and Nick were saying beforehand, it's not super different. But again, I'll always take an extended cut of a movie. So yeah, I've watched this throughout the years. I try to focus on the positives, which I do think there are some. But yeah, I guess my history with it is about as long as the first movie. And the first movie is easier to watch for sure. But I still return to this.
Literally and figuratively, as we'll elaborate on later.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my history. Probably the AVPs are probably the ones that I have the most, not current, but like as they were coming out, it was something that I was looking forward to. Whereas the rest of the movies, I watched them after the fact. Again, because I wasn't old enough to see them when they debuted. So yeah, that's my history.
Well, me, I only knew that this movie was a thing because I watched a trailer of it on TV around Christmas time. So I was like, damn, there's another Alien versus Predator film. Also, pardon my hair. I just fell into a food coma before this video started, which will have to involve me breaking out the burp fuel.
Oh, what is it today?
Still Sam's Cola.
Not bad.
So, I didn't see it in theaters. This was back in the glory days of Blockbuster when my mom and my stepdad used to live in a duplex. Well, they still live in a duplex technically, but they lived in a different duplex. And she was friends at the time with her neighbor. And she actually rented Alien vs. Predator Requiem because she had a little son that I was kind of friends with. And they knew that I was a big Alien and Predator fan. So they said, hey, we got the new Alien vs. Predator film. You want to see it? So I was like, hell yeah. So I sat down and I, against my mom's wishes, watched the first Alien vs. Predator, or the second Alien vs. Predator film for the first time. And I dug it. I thought it was very entertaining. It gave me what I wanted and then some, at least at the time. So then my mom actually bought it from Blockbuster and gave it to me. And I watched the shit out of this movie for some reason when I was really young. Like there was a few nights where I would actually stay up late watching the film and then I would like fall asleep. And then I would like kind of drift in and out of sleep for the rest of the night listening to the menu on loop.
Hey, no, you watched it at night because that's the only time you could see it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, yes, but also no. So.
No, I hear you. Really what it is I think we were both less discerning whenever we were younger, or most people are anyway. But again, real quick, I'll say I've watched this the most out of our recent rewatches, oddly enough. So anyway, continue.
Then the movie just escaped me for a long time. The DVD that I had, which was the Blockbuster copy, eventually just got so fucked off that it just wouldn't work anymore. So I decided to repurchase it from my local FYE on Blu-ray. Then I had to force myself to sit down and watch it. And, well, no, beforehand, hold on. Then James Rolfe did Sequelathon 2 for Monster Madness. And, of course, he reviewed Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And that's when he pointed out all the flaws. And kind of burst my bubble a little bit. But then when I repurchased the film, I sat down and I rewatched it. And I was like, Yep, he was right. Well, I don't think this is one of the worst movies ever made. I mean, I've seen far worse, but yeah, looking back on this movie, I really question a lot of the decisions that were made in this film because there's things about Alien versus Predator Requiem that are good, are actually really good, and some of the best that this franchise has ever had. But the issues that this movie has are so big and so bad that it does slightly taint the good stuff here. But as Trev says, whenever I think about this one, I really try to focus on the good aspects and just kind of ignore the bad. But this should be a very interesting film to discuss. But that being said,
no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. This is for fans only, and you have to be like hardcore in the things that you like about either Alien or Predator.
Mm-hmm. So, with that being said, let us get into the plot of Requiem, shall we? Following the events of the previous film, a Predator ship leaves Earth carrying alien facehuggers and the dead body of Scar, the Predator that helped Lex defeat the Xenomorph Queen. A chestburster with traits of both species erupts from Scar's body, and with the Queen Alien panting sound effects, quickly matures into an adult Pred Alien and starts killing the Predators on board. In the extended cut, this happens on a scout ship that has been detached from the mothership. A Predator's weapon punctures the hole, and the ship crashes in the forest outside of Gunnison, Colorado, killing all but one of the Youches, who is severely injured and sends a distress signal before being killed by the Predalien. The Predalien and several facehuggers escape, implanting embryos into a nearby father and son. Boy, this movie's mean-spirited. Who are out hunting in the forest, as well as several homeless people who live in the sewers. On the Predator homeworld, a skilled veteran Predator named Wolf receives the signal and takes it upon himself to travel to Earth to hunt and kill xenomorphs. He arrives at the crashed Predator ship uses a blue acid-like liquid to dissolve and erase evidence of xenomorph's presence and triggers an implosion to completely destroy the vessel. Meanwhile, ex-convict Dallas Howard has just returned to Gunnison after serving 3 years in prison. He is greeted by Sheriff Eddie Morales and reunites with his younger brother Ricky. Ricky has a romantic interest that's totally forced with his classmate Jesse, but is constantly harassed by her boyfriend Dale and his two friends. Kelly O'Brien has also just returned to Gunnison after serving in the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division and reunites with her husband Tim and daughter Molly. Darcy Benson, the wife of the killed father, this movie's got a lot of characters, begins searching for her missing husband and son. Meanwhile, local waitress Carrie Adams discovers she is pregnant, but her police officer husband, Ray, is killed by Wolf after witnessing him dissolving the bodies of Darcy's husband and son while he was searching for them in the forest. Wolf skins the corpse. Why was this a thing? This feels totally out of left field. And hangs him upside down from a tree branch for sport. Just kind of feels like it was a side quest. Oh, I'm just having a bit of fun thing.
I'll elaborate in a minute.
Wolf tracks several xenomorphs in the sewer and defeats 2 of them, but as the battle reaches the surface, 4 disperse into the town. Wolf pursues some to the power plant, where collateral damage from his plasma casters cause a citywide power outage. Oh boy. Ricky and Jesse meet at the high school swimming pool to bone, but are interrupted by Dale and his friends just as the power goes out, and a xenomorph enters the pool area, killing Dale's 2 friends. Another xenomorph invades the O'Brien home, killing Tim while Kelly escapes with Molly. After the fry cook at the local diner where Carrie works is attacked by the Predalien, very confusingly having his spine and skull torn out, Carrie is also attacked after hearing the cook's screams and is impregnated by the Predalien with 3 chest bursters. Was it 3 or 4?
I think it was 4, but definitely 3.
Darcy discovers her body in horror, but Sheriff Morales arrives and brings her with him. Kelly, Molly, Ricky, Jesse, Dale, Dallas, and Morales gather at a sporting goods store to collect weapons. Troops from the Colorado Army National Guard arrive, but are quickly slaughtered by xenomorphs. Wolf briefly captures Dallas inside the store to use as bait to lure xenomorphs. He, however, escapes. Several xenomorphs... Why was that necessary, too?
Yeah, because I think they were going to be coming in there to, collect people anyway, but I don't know.
Several Xenos arrive, and Wolf handily defeats them, like a badass. Dale is killed by a xenomorph during the battle, like an asshole, and one of Wolf's plasma casters becomes damaged. He later removes the remaining one and modifies it into a handheld blaster, like a badass. As the survivors attempt to escape Gunnison, they make radio contact with Colonel Stevens and are told that an air evacuation is being staged at the center of town. We'll get back to that later. Dallas and Kelly are skeptical since going there would cause them to be surrounded by Xenos, so they, along with Ricky, Jesse, and Molly, and a few others, go for the helicopter at the hospital to get out of town, while Sheriff Morales and Darcy head to the evacuation zone. However, the hospital has been invaded and overrun by xenomorphs and the Predalien, making this essentially their giant hive, who has impregnated other pregnant women to breed more xenomorphs. This is the worst part of the movie. Like, jeez. Wolf arrives where he dispatches more Xenos, and during the battle, the Predator accidentally impales Jesse on one of his glaives. Distraught, Ricky rushes Wolf with rifle fire, only to be injured by the Predalien. Wolf is attacked by a xenomorph and both tumble down an elevator shaft, and Dallas takes possession of Wolf's plasma blaster. Dallas, Ricky, Kelly, and Molly reach the roof and fight off several Xenos before escaping in the helicopter, while Wolf, having survived the fall, battles the Predalien on the roof in hand-to-hand combat, which kind of makes me realize I need to add 2 more cons to my list. Wolf and the Predalien mortally wound each other just as a military jet arrives. Rather than a rescue mission, it's actually an execution with a tactical nuclear strike that levels the entire city, instantly destroying the entire town gathered at Ground Zero. The shockwave causes the fleeing helicopter to crash in a clearing where the survivors are rescued by the military. Wolf's plasma blaster is confiscated, and Colonel Stevens presents it to Miss Yutani, thus ending the film and killing any future possibilities of a third Alien vs. Predator film. Trev?
So, there are some good elements to this plot. It's actually very, I guess some people, if they were more harsh, would say it's derivative of the 80s Blob movie. I didn't realize that till I actually finally saw the 1988 The Blob.
Oh my God, you're right, it is.
Yeah, there's also a little bit of Return of the Living Dead in here because just like at the end of this movie, they perform a tactical strike on the town at the end of Return of the Living Dead. So what I actually like about this movie, but it unfortunately doesn't do as well as it should have, is that it kind of derives a lot of inspiration from 80s monster movies, which, would feel appropriate to the genre. Although some people just want to always see an alien movie that takes place in outer space, but there's potential for them to come to Earth and create some interesting scenarios there. Of course, you always have to try and keep them from propagating too much because they could very easily take over, like the Thing. But yeah, again, it's some fun genre stuff in here, at least in theory. But like as Nick was saying, as we were reading the plot, there are some things which are really just done as homage. The brothers Strauss they actually literally just said that, like the scene where the one officer gets skinned and his corpse is left hanging, that's purely done because the brothers wanted to homage the original Predator. Because, otherwise it makes you think, well, Wolf is detracting from his mission and he's just doing that to do it because that's what predators do. There was something said that he might have used the officer as a food source too. But, again, it's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is homage for the sake of homage. Some of it I like, admittedly, because I'm a fanboy. But yeah, it does kind of, it doesn't flow in some places. And like I noticed you discussed with the pregnant women scene, Nick. It is rather pretty far in the opposite direction of where we were with AVP. Pretty hardcore alien stuff, but it almost feels like it's a line that they shouldn't cross. It has that kind of dirty.
It almost feels like an exploitation movie.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing was, and I will recommend the commentary for this movie. It'll make it easier to watch, I think, because even though some of their decisions are questionable, I think the brothers Strauss are fans, and it sounds like even if they probably made a questionable fan film, they still would be fun to talk to. I get that impression. And this is also oddly the only Predator movie that longtime producer John Davis actually participates in the commentary for. And he's a fun guy to listen to too, although he does kind of come across as very producery. But no, yeah. Anyway, it was funny because they said that they actually both their wives were pregnant around the time they were making this. And they felt very differently after their kids were born about what they did in this movie. So I thought that was pretty funny in hindsight. If
wonder why.
Call it funny. Yeah. But no, yeah, I'll get into it a little bit more with the pros and cons. But there's things I like, and then there's things that there's room for improvement, to say the least.
For those of you who don't know, the brothers Strauss are the directors of this movie, Greg and Colin Strauss, whom are primarily special effects artists. But they're also... Okay, so Trev, you have this whole spiel that you have about special effects guys being bad directors. You want to elaborate on that?
Oh, not like a big thing. I mean, it's actually talked about, whenever you bring up certain movies. Well, like, for instance, in response to the Thing prequel, Alex excuse you.
Oh.
Feel better?
Yep.
Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr. I actually haven't seen the one movie that Tom went and did, although it sounds pretty neat. It's a noir demon cop story, Fire City. It sounds neat. But no, Alec Gillis went off, and in response to how Universal treated their Thing movie,
Harbinger Down.
Harbinger Down. Unfortunately, that's another example of a movie with some pretty neat effects, admittedly. But it's just missing that extra something that a movie needs. I mean, there can be nice effects and everything, and sometimes they're the saving grace. But then it becomes hard if the rest of the movie just is lacking in any depth of character, any dramatic flourish that a well-rounded director brings to a movie. Somebody who's just not an expert at a certain field,
then it just feels like a tech demo.
Yeah, exactly. Stan Winston with Pumpkinhead is probably the sole exception, and even he has problems with it, I think. But Pumpkinhead probably is the best example, or not the best example of effects directors whenever they're the actual director of a movie, the movie sucking. That's actually probably the one exception to the norm in the fact that it's actually hit some pretty good emotional beats and whatnot. It's not just Pumpkinhead running around slaughtering people, even though it is. If you get my meaning, there's something else there, and I think Stan Winston, obviously, because he's a legend in the business, he obviously had that extra something, and I kind of wish that he had directed more because I think he probably would have just got better. But anyway, there's other examples. The ADI guys who actually get along very well with the brothers Strauss. They have they in their commentary for the movie, which is okay. They promote their book for the movie a little bit too much for my tastes. But they say that they have kind of similar tastes in terms of what they like about practical effects and whatnot with the brothers. So that they had a fun time making this movie, if nothing else. But then again, it's ironic because then whenever these guys are actually directing like a legit movie, they don't bring the whole package to the table. So yeah, I mean, there's other examples that I would have to look up, but there's a long history of effects guys directing movies, like as the actual director and not just the effects department.
One big example that comes to mind for me is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, where that film's director was also a big guy in special effects. Well, I think that's another exception where, well, the characters suck, but you could say that about a lot of other Friday the 13th movies too, so I don't think you should really hold that against the director. And another one too that's more recent is Hellraiser Judgment with...
Oh, yeah, that's one.
Gary J. Tunnicliffe, who was a big special effects guy for pretty much the whole, at least direct-to-video era, from what I've heard, of Hellraiser. But then he finally got his opportunity. Huh?
He took over as the primary guy in number 3, but he was also an assistant for the first 2. But yeah, he was definitely the guy for all the direct-to-video movies. But anyway, continue.
And then he finally got his opportunity to destroy the Hellraiser franchise with Hellraiser Judgment and pretty much Terminator Dark Fate it.
Yeah, you could say some of these these longtime fans who are working in effects, you could say it's true for the brothers here in this movie, and then Tunnicliffe. They have some ideas for the franchise where you're like, that's hardcore in like a adolescent teenage boy kind of way, and it's like, I guess they need to get it out of their system, but it doesn't have any nuance to it. I also wanted to say that John Carl Buechler, it looked like Buechler, but it's Buechler. It's pronounced Buechler. He's the director for Friday Part 7.
That's what it was. Okay,
I was kind of reminded. Yeah, he's kind of a slightly better example because he actually did more than just 1 or 2 movies. Friday Part 7 does kind of remind me in aspects of Requiem, for one thing, because Requiem is kind of a slasher movie, at least in terms of some of its human characters. Yeah. But no, it's kind of sad, but I do wish that the effects guys knew how to do more than just the effects, because really the history just shows that they should probably just be part of a whole and not the captain of a ship.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But well, the brothers did get... I actually like Skyline better than this movie, only marginally though. But that is an example of them getting better. And then I think they just realized, hey, we need to go back to doing effects because they haven't done anything else directing-wise since. So.
Well, it's also in Hollywood, it's difficult for someone to be like a jack of all trades, like someone who can direct, produce, write, and do effects. There's people that can do like 2 of those, but then not really anything else. Then you have an even rarer example where, like Robert Rodriguez, for example, he can write, direct, and edit, as well as Sylvester Stallone. He can also write, direct, and edit, but just kind of seems like, well, this is good too because, you know, films are a collaborative effort, but more often than not, people, they just like, they have their niche of work and they stick to it, which isn't bad per se, but it is kind of a shame that there's not as many people in Hollywood that are jack of all trades type people.
Yeah. I will say, one little note about Robert is that he's like a creative juggernaut. He's like, he's the guy who can, like you said, just a jack of all trades. He can just do anything.
True, yeah. Like he's the only guy who can go from a modern day Western with, oh shit, I just totally forgot his name. Antonio Banderas wielding a giant shotgun and having friends with ridiculous guitar weapons. He can go from that to directing a futuristic cyberpunk cyborg movie about a badass now Disney princess character slaughtering androids and robots.
And in between that, a very, very, very kiddie, but to some extent enjoyable franchise about Spy Kids.
True, yeah, that too. So with all that being said...
Yeah, just one more thing. I guess I will just say for the brothers, I think they might have had the opportunity to improve had if Hollywood was more lenient. But since they had 2 strikes, or that's the general consensus, had 2 strikes, they pretty much weren't ever given the chance to improve as directors. But anyway, yeah, with that being said,
let's get into our pros and cons of Requiem. Trev, you can go first.
Okay. Hold on, there it is. I have 5 pros, also 5 cons, because again, I feel very 50-50 about this movie. Pro number 1, undeniably, is Mr. Wolf. He is the main reason that I returned to this movie. He is actually, I think I said this for the Predator 2 review, him and the City Hunter. For you, Nick, it's Scar and... Did you say it was Scar and Wolf were your favorites?
Scar and Dark from the 2010 Alien vs. Predator film.
Yeah. So yeah, from the expanded universe for AVP, if you will. For me in the movies, I like the City Hunter and I like Wolf. For one thing, they actually have similar designs, particularly in their mask. But Wolf's mask is black, and of course, add character to him, which is nice because he actually has character. He has several markings on his mask that indicate his long history. And as me and Nick were talking about beforehand, he's a predator or a Yautja who you feel like he's at the point where he's like right before becoming like a respected elder. He's a veteran of the species. He's one of the coolest scenes in the movie is on the Predator home planet. Which
they tease.
Which was what?
They tease us so badly. Everyone's been wanting to see the Predator homeworld for like since day one, and the only glimpse of it that we have is in this movie.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and say, since it's related to him, that is also something that is neat about the movie. Even though it is just a tease, we see that they live in a very hot climate. For one thing, because there's a river of lava down below in the cityscape, and they also have a very pyramid-like aesthetic to their buildings and whatnot.
Architecture,
which ties into AVP, which they actually mention in their commentary. So yeah, Wolf. I love this guy. I mean, really. What it amounts to is that we're watching an Alien and Predator movie. The Predator aspect of this movie is much stronger than the last one. I guess to balance out any qualms that people might have had with them in the first one. But at the same time, I think that the xenomorphs, they serve their function. Nothing that's done with them. They don't feel disrespected. because with xenomorphs, they're basically just big savage,
mindless monsters.
Mindless monsters. So since the brothers, like, their favorite alien movie is Aliens, they basically serve that. They basically serve the same function they did in that. They even have the same ridge design on their head that the warrior xenomorphs have in Aliens. But they still like throw in other little things from the movies. Like, there's a scene of a xenomorph swimming, like from Resurrection. There's one where the xeno eats one of the characters. And
is that what it was doing?
Huh?
So the scene when right before the xeno gets impaled through the back of the head by Wolf, when it's like, was he eating that dude in front of the pool?
Yeah, he actually was, and they said that was supposed to be a callback to Alien 3, because there were moments in Alien 3 where the runner was basically just eating some of the prisoners. Really, because what all the runner had to do in that movie was make sure that nothing happened to the baby queen. So I guess in its downtime, it was eating all the other people. But yeah, anyway, I'm bringing up the xenomorph stuff because they're not necessarily a pro for me, and I'm just bringing them up here with Wolf because they're the subject of his hunt. Definitely one of the strongest aspects of this movie is the fact that it delivers upon that promise that Predator 2 suggests that an Alien versus Predator movie could do as a sequel to it. And that's that the subject of a predator hunt could be hunting xenomorphs. In this case, he's trying to eradicate the Predalien, which is, I think, Nick, you probably mentioned that either in the last review or off camera. In the lore, the Predalien is supposed to be like an abomination.
in the Yautja culture, this is explained in the expanded universe for Alien versus Predator. Predator-alien hybrids are seen by the Yautja culture as 100% total abominations, like things that should not exist whatsoever. And it's a great dishonor for them to exist. And when one arrives, they become like priority number one to eradicate. Like, even if there's some clans that kind of not really war, but they're not on the same wavelength for their missions, should a Predalien arrive, those two clans will immediately unite together to just take this thing out as quickly as possible. Because Predaliens are seen as a great dishonor.
Well, and to further elaborate on that point, there was a deleted scene. If you go looking for it, there's like a blue screen set where there's some skinned predators, and instead of the red hanging corpses that we see with the humans, the corpses of the predators would be like the bright green that like their blood. It probably would actually been a pretty eerie sight. But anyway, yeah, it's that scene where Wolf's going on to the ship that crashed, and he's like investigating. He puts on the biomass to figure out what happened. An extension of that would have been him seeing that there were skinned predators. Which, to elaborate on something that you were asking about, Nick, when you read the plot, you were wondering why the Predalien ripped out the spine of the cook. Well, it's like with an actual predator, Yautja, it's for trophy basis, or as we'll discuss when we get to the predator, other reasons. Basically, it's just that instinct that the Yautja have.
Yeah, I'll elaborate more on that when I get to my pros.
Yeah, so basically, it's really just there's several homages done here just for the sake of homage, and, it gives people pause. But once they explain it, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing there. You don't get a real good shot of it, unfortunately.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, like you told me, Nick, you thought it was actually like the tail impaling or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's only after it's pointed out that you see that it's actually a spine being ripped out. But anyway, Wolf. The Wolf is undoubtedly the main reason to watch this movie. He's a badass. His arsenal. That's all. I'm not gonna list that as a separate pro because I think Nick's probably gonna do that. But I'll just bring it up while I'm talking about Wolf. Like he has the whip. He has the double plasma casters. Well, one's just one that he retrieves from the ship that he adds onto his shoulder, I do believe. His planes that he puts in the sewer that kind of provide a technical, or not a technical, but they provide a layout like a map for him to kind of survey the area and also set up a trap with lasers for the xenomorphs in the sewer.
I just call him a laser grid.
Yeah. He also has a power glove. That's kind of campy, but it's something that he uses to punch through the street so he can come up to the surface.
Like a badass.
Yeah. As a Predator fan, it just scratches my my fanboy itches in terms of like what I want to see a Predator do. And it definitely in that respect, they deliver upon it. They also, there's the random skinning scene, which they either say is for him to, as a source of food, or they basically just said it looks cool. That's why they did it.
I don't really think it was for a food source because, they do. I used to watch a lot of Alien Theory, who's pretty much like to the Alien franchise what like the Stupendous Wave or Star Wars Theory is to Star Wars. And Alien Theory did a video on like what do the predators eat, and they never state that they would feed on humans. They would just like feed on cattle or livestock. They're carnivorous, obviously, because of their teeth, but they would never feed on humans. Xenos are more what feed on humans.
Or, of course, use them for reproduction later on to take them back to the nest.
That too.
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of, I think they were probably joking. It's kind of like Michael Dougherty saying that Mothra laid eggs in Rodan's chest, even though that's something that she's never done before.
No.
Kind of little cheek. Michael's obviously a horror director, so he has that wicked sense of humor. And obviously, based on some of the decisions in this movie, the brothers have some tendencies that lean towards the super horror film vein, or as like Nick said, they lean into exploitation. But no, yeah, and for the wrap up on Wolf, because he's the Predator element, I'm just kind of bringing up all the Predator things that stick out. This is the last movie where we see the classic Predator vision.
Yep.
We also hear the classic sounds, which, I love that. And then, like there's other little things like the cemetery where the one power plant worker is.
Being a douchebag.
The cemetery, if you look closely, like the one that he's leaning up against, the headstone says Hawkins, and in their commentary, the brother Strauss said that they thought that all of Arnie's men or Dutch's men from Predator went home to Colorado or buried there. They were joking; they were having a good time, but based on the Easter egg they planted, it's kind of like their canon,
their head canon,
and also. Yeah, and then also, that cemetery moment, which is also, like I point out, part of the extended version. It's also just another good Predator moment because, I'm a sucker for that heat vision moment where the Predator is like repeating what somebody says. In this case, it's kind of funny because it's a character saying fuck you," over and again. So I kind of laugh every time that pops up. But it also demonstrates the reason why he got killed is because he was armed. Because Wolf zeroes in on the gun, and that's why he ends up shooting him. And Kelly almost picks it up, but then she thinks better of it. So yeah, it's just a nice little Predator touch that definitely adds to the fact that this is a Predator movie overall.
Yep.
While not slouching on the xenomorphs. So yeah, you're probably going to say more. I think I've probably said enough about Wolf, but yeah, he's my main reason for coming back to this.
He's pretty much anyone's real reason for coming back to this. Like Mr. H reviews, he stated that the only good thing about this movie in his like short-lived Mr. Hate reviews is Wolf. He says that he's like the highlight of the film. which he is, in which is a shame because he has such little screen time. But I'll get back to that later.
And I guess I don't really notice it because he's what I'm looking forward to. So what I get of him is basically the main redeeming quality for the movie. So I don't know. I guess I'm satisfied with what we see of him. But anyway, pro number 2 for me is the Predalien, which apparently the brothers nicknamed Chet. It's funny, that's a boy's name, but they said that they thought they were probably thinking that the Predalien would be like a young queen who would eventually mature into a bigger, a full-size queen. But there are some problems with that because, for one thing, the face huggers that produce queen bursters are much larger and nastier than the regular face huggers. And the face hugger that we see latch on to Scar in the previous movie is obviously just a regular one. So that's something that wouldn't have worked. So I prefer to think of the Predalien or Chet as his own thing. I was telling Nick this in conversation. I kind of like to think of the Predalien as like the closest thing we've seen to a king xenomorph in the franchise, even though those are their own separate thing in the lore. There's just there's a regal presence to the Predalien that is like a step below the queen. And there was also some discussion somewhere in my time surfing on the internet, looking up what people say about the movie and whatnot. Along this line of thought, they were saying that this was the Predalien's behavior was very hyper masculine and testosterone and very aggressive and whatnot, even to the point where the rather unsavory ability to actually deposit chest bursters right into a host is basically the equivalent of him going around and raping all these women, pretty much. They also said that the Predalien did that, and it had this ability because, well, again, in theory, if it was a young queen, that would be a way to establish a nest a lot quicker. But they also pointed out that we don't see it. The Predalien also has its own special kind of vision. There's no shots in the movie that show its perspective and whatnot, but it's actually able to see whether or not a woman is pregnant or not. So that's actually why he's targeting the women, is because the chest bursters that he's going to implant will feed on the baby, which is pretty fucked up if you think about it. But yeah, this is all actually stuff that they were saying, and actually, when you watch the movie, it makes sense because it's like, oh, okay, that's why he's targeting all these women, and he can actually, it's actually kind of a reverse of the City Hunter in Predator 2, seeing Leona's infant and then not killing her because it's part of his code. For a xenomorph that's part predator, it would make sense that they wouldn't, of course, care about that, and they would just use that to further their reproduction goals. So it all makes sense. It makes sense, but it is pretty twisted. I think this movie, in terms of its xenomorphs and as well as Covenant, are probably the most messed up and gory in terms of what they did with them. Alien 3 and Resurrection kind of started leaning more into a more gory direction, because with Alien and Aliens, the gore was about as much as you would expect, but nothing more.
Here it's more over the top.
Well, gradually, in terms of alien stuff, it has become more and more over the top, but I guess that's just kind of a trend with anything, is that if you want to top yourself, you just keep on getting bigger and bigger and more outlandish. I guess that's what I see with this here. But no, the Predalien is a really neat design. Again, it's regal looking. It has some neat traits from both species. Nick pointed out it makes sounds that are the panting noise from the queen, which again goes into their theory about it being a young queen, even though it's not. It contradicts some other things, so I'm glad they didn't make it more obvious. But no, it's a neat monster. obviously, because it's two really neat creatures put together anyway. But since it doesn't really have a character, see, the thing with Wolf is that he is really literally the only actual character in the movie. There's things that he does, like whenever he mourns the fallen predators and whatnot, that make you empathize with him as much as you can. So that's why he's like the only actual character in the movie.
As we'll elaborate on further later.
Yes, and the Predalien doesn't have that because, for one thing, it's a xenomorph, but there is like a sinister intelligence to the way it operates.
And it's not necessarily sinister; it's more just sadistic. I got the sense that the Predalien is a very sadistic piece of shit, like, and it knows that it's a sadistic piece of shit, and it embraces that.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we would probably see, or what we do see with the other breed of predators in Predators, and also with the assassin predator in The Predator, is that there's, in that regard, it's a subset of predators who have tossed their code of honor to the wind, and they're just killing for the sake of killing, or mining things for more than just trophies, the genetic material and whatnot. More on that on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, but the Predalien, not as much of a reason to come back as Wolf is for me, but still a highlight of the movie. Pro number 3, I do like the score, and the main reason is that there's a lot of callbacks to the other movies.
Yep.
There's a lot of aliens in here. There's a lot of Alien 3, like when the movie starts, the Fox logo comes up, and as it finishes, it does that sinister droning sound, which also happens in Alien 3. And then, there's also sound effects that are pulled from all the movies, like the xenomorphs. They have their it's the peacock elephant cry, because that's what the sound effect was that James Cameron used in Aliens whenever they get killed. The sound effect they got was from a peacock.
Oh, like that really screechy sound?
Yeah, they got that. They record that in a zoo, and a peacock made a noise at the same time as a baby elephant, and then mixed together had that effect. And again, going along with the brothers being fans of Aliens, it's obviously their favorite Alien movie. Although I should mention they were influenced by Alien in that they wanted there to be an everyman quality to the cast. Unfortunately, they didn't really pull it off, but more on that when we get to the cons. But yeah, no, the score, the soundtrack, I guess, because I include like sound effects in the soundtrack, I guess you'd say. Just so many great little audio references to the previous movie, which is the one thing. There's one thing. The term Requiem, the title, is supposed to be. It means homage, and I think that's basically what the brothers wanted to do with this movie. And in some respects, they succeed. The score is definitely a case of that. Brian Tyler, this was one of his earlier scores. He ended up doing a bunch of Marvel scores later on, like Iron Man 3, The Dark World. There's some other examples. He also did the score for Power Rangers 2017. He definitely has some fans in his corner. It kind of reminds me a bit of Bear McCreary, but Bear probably has a bit more of a following, perhaps. But yeah, I like the score. I like the references in it. It fits the title of Requiem, and in that regard, it's actually a success that this movie can be proud of. Pro number 4, my screen went black. There we go. Is the effects when you can see them. Yeah, the Predalien is a very well designed, practical creature. I don't know if Tom played the Predalien.
He did.
He played the other. He did? Okay, because he played Grid in the first movie. He also plays any of the other alien, the xenomorphs, where you can see that they're a suit.
Keep talking. I got to take a leak.
What was that?
Keep talking. I have to take a whiz.
Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah, the effects in this, the alien stuff is good. Not the brothers, but ADI, as I was saying in the last review, They basically took over the Alien franchise with Alien 3 and then continued on with Resurrection. And then the AVP movies, I think, really were the peak of their Alien work, and it actually ended up being the last thing that they did with Alien because other people, effects people, ended up working on Prometheus and Covenant, probably per Ridley Scott's request. But no, I think they convinced me that the Predator stuff in the last movie wasn't too bad. I have some qualms with it, and again, like I said, depending on my viewing, it is how much my mood viewing is how much it bothers me. But here, I think Wolf is definitely a step up in their Predator designs. They give him a lot of character. He has acid burns from previous encounters with xenomorphs.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, that's why his face is all fucked up. He's also missing a tusk, which is in reference
He's actually
to
I think he's missing a good chunk of one, but he's like missing the tip of another.
Oh yeah, that definitely for sure. So he's inspired by Broken Tusk, but he's obviously his own thing altogether as well. But yeah, I'm impressed with their Predator work here. They also have some good face masks for some of the other Predator or biomasks that for some of the other Predators that we see that get killed on the ship. And of course, they also contribute. The effects also contribute to like the design for like I guess it's Wolf's apartment on the quote unquote apartment or his
domain.
His pad. Yeah, his pad in Predator hometown. He has all these masks and whatnot. Just an impressive. Again, I can't stress enough how good the Predator elaboration is in this movie. But then also again, this was the height of ADI's work with alien stuff, both of the AVP movies, and they haven't come back to it. So I guess it was a good note to go out on as far as effects are concerned. But yeah, again, when you can see them, the effects are still really good. The darkness actually probably helps the CGI stuff because it's more noticeable in the first movie because it's a better lit movie for one thing. But yeah, the CGI stuff isn't too bad here. Used minimally because ADI doesn't really care for CGI. Obviously, they try.
So
to use
they're the opposite of the effects people for the new Tremors movies. What the hell is the name of that one?
Oh crap! Some guys out of South Africa do Cine something.
Cinescope?
Oh crap. No, it's I don't remember. We did mention it in our Tremors reviews, but yeah, I see what you're saying though.
Well, with them being very pro CGI, whereas here they're very pro practical.
Well, the new guys doing the last three Tremors movies, they have an attitude which kind of befits a studio attitude where they're just trying to make sure they appeal to the widest demographic. And for better or worse, CGI stuff tends to be the most favored special effect now. Because everything else, unfortunately, unless you're a fan, tends to get dismissed or critiqued, or people say, "Oh, it looks so fake." But then at the same time, there's people who are starting to complain more and more about CGI, and it's like, well, why don't you let the other effects techniques kind of come in and help blend everything so it's not just reliant on one kind of effect. But
if I was to start a special effects company, that would be me. I would be I would have my foot planted firmly in both CGI effects and practical.
Oh yeah, I think that's the way to go. It's just unfortunately, like with so many things, it's one extreme or the other, and it's not the balance that you can strike to make everybody happy or most people. But yeah, I'll let you talk more about the effects, as I'm sure you're probably going to bring up it in some capacity. But yeah, it's a monster movie with good effects, and what more could you ask for?
A bigger budget.
A bigger budget, yeah, that too, or better lighting. More emphasis on that. Finally, my last pro, actually, as we've been talking, I kind of took away from this a little bit. What I wrote down was balanced fan service, but as I realized, some of the fan service isn't that balanced, and it kind of just sticks out like a sore thumb. But I will say that I do appreciate it, and I've actually already elaborated on it, talking about the score, because I talked about the sound effects too, and those are definitely pulled from the other movies, like the bongo drums from the Predator movies, Predator 1 and 2 at this point in time. The bits that are from the Alien movies, like the sounds that they make or the score. There's just some nice fan service here that, as a fan, I can appreciate. Although I would probably have asked them, like as we brought up, like the skinned officer, or
doesn't feel
like
necessary.
that. It's a neat shot, and I also like the music building up to that, because again, it's an homage to Predator. But I usually don't make a big deal out of this so long as I'm entertained. But it is a good thing to have an internal logic to your plot, so that there's not too many plot holes and whatnot. But yeah, that's going off into a con. But I'll just say I do appreciate most of the fan service in this movie, and it's my last pro.
Okay, so I have 8 pros. I'm kind of going to be all over the place here, so bear with me. Pro number 1 is the musical score. I do like the music score in this movie. I'm not going to talk about the sound effects, as I have another pro for that. But I do like the score. I like that they took a lot more inspirations from previous Predator and Alien films. Like the opening is a perfect hybridization of sound and sound effects from previous Alien and Predator films. So that was like, okay,
sure.
That's cool. That you can tell that these guys are fans. And the use of more Predator, I would say that I think the music is more leaning towards like more Predator sound cues, like the jungle.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this movie overall is just leaning more towards Predator, but yeah, go on.
Like the music takes more of the bongo sound effects to add a bit more mood. Just overall, the music sounds a lot more like a Predator film. And just overall, when they're not using Alien or Predator music or sound effects, the music we do have here is a bit more generic than the previous movie, but it is also equally as effective. Like mainly it's for action scenes, because the music is very like one example I can think of is when the music like builds to a crescendo as Wolf rises out of the sewer holding the 2 Xenos in each arm. I'm just like, fuck yes. So the music is good. It's very, very homage and fan service heavy, but that's not a bad thing, which will lead into one of my big pros of this movie. But yeah, I like the music. Pro number 2, oh damn, a whole lot of the pros have to do with that now that I think about it. But pro number 2 is Wolf himself. Dude is a total badass juggernaut. I would absolutely love to see like an animated prequel series about how Wolf came to be Wolf. Like obviously with how he's designed, his mask and his body language and his attitude, this is a very he's very much so an older, very skilled, very knowledgeable, and very badass motherfucker. And like his face says so many things with no words at all, like with him having the acid burns, and he's obviously very grizzled and really rough and gruff, so you can tell that this dude's been through some shit. And also with him having a giant arsenal in his apartment, I'll say, for lack of a better term, you can tell that this dude's been around. And also his like go get him attitude. When he receives a distress signal, he doesn't hesitate at all in just suiting up and heading back to Earth to fuck some shit up. And boy, does he fuck some shit up. He fucking slaughters so effortlessly and easily so many Xenos in this movie. It's not even funny. I wish Scar could have survived so that he could have learned some shit from this dude. Because damn, Wolf is one badass motherfucker. And I love his arsenal too. He dual wields.
Yeah, imagine a team up with Scar and Wolf. And even if everything else in this movie was still lacking, that would actually add even more character to the movie. If Wolf was actually kind of like a mentor to Scar and actually improving like his becoming a man, so to speak.
Yep.
So yeah, that would have definitely been cool. Anyway, continue.
So much so, I love Wolf so much. I wish he was the main character of this film. Because one thing I think would have been really cool to show that Wolf is a very experienced hunter is if he actually could speak English. Because then he would have been the main character for us to follow, because they established that they can mimic human speech, but what's stopping them from actually learning how to speak English or various other languages? If only, because that's what I would have done if I was doing this movie, because as we'll discuss later, the human characters in this are moving on. So yeah, I love Wolf. He's a total badass. There's a lot that's done with him and the little amount of screen time that he has, which thankfully, if there's a character in a movie that doesn't have a lot of screen time, but there's a lot done with him when he is on screen, that is a good way to handle a character, because whenever they are on screen, they do leave an impact and you remember what they do. Another example being Mechagodzilla in the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. He only has barely 10 minutes of screen time, but when he is on screen, you remember the shit that he does.
And I'm going to return to this probably when we get to the cons. Godzilla in 2014 isn't used very much, but what is done with them is very memorable.
Yep, I guess. Pro number 3 is the Predalien. I fucking love this thing. Sinister, sadistic, mean-spirited personality aside, this monster is quite something else. I do like the concept of hybrid monsters, even though I think sometimes, this is mainly with the Ultraman franchise, hybrid monsters can come off as being kind of lazy. Like you're just rehashing older ideas in order to make new ones, which unfortunately the Ultraman franchise sort of has been doing for the last few years. But they kind of barely cross the line between overusage sometimes, but it's not so bad. But just the concept of hybrid monsters is cool. You wonder, what would a hybrid of, let's think.
There's actually a pretty good, there's a model kit out there called Kongzilla, which actually blends the traits of both of them, and it looks like a pretty neat little monster.
Okay, there's that. Okay, so what would a hybrid of Godzilla and Evangelion look like? There's another model kit of that out there too. What would a hybrid of Superman and Hulk look like? What would a hybrid of Freddy and Pennywise look like? What would a hybrid of Godzilla and Gamera look like? There's tons of hybrid ideas out there that are really cool. And of course, a big one that I'm sure a lot of people were thinking about is, what would a hybridization of a predator and a xenomorph look like? And this movie perfectly replicates that. I feel like you could not do a Predalien in any other way aside from what they showcase here. It looks like a xenomorph, but it also looks like a Yautja. It perfectly balances elements of both species and rolls it into its own new thing. It can be more hunched over and more quadruped like a Xeno, but it can also stand upright and bipedal like a Yautja. It has the long tail of a xenomorph, but also has the really super stocky muscular limbs of a Yautja. It has both the inner jaw of a xenomorph, but it has the mandibles of a Yautja, and also the dreadlocks and head crest of both the xenomorph and a Yautja. It's a perfect blend, if you ask me. And also the color too. You can barely see the color, but it's like a good mix of a dark green and a dark yellowish green color. And it's perfectly done in my opinion. And also it helps that the fucking Predalien is just a total juggernaut in this movie. Like Wolf has to try his damnedest to fuck this thing up, and in the end, unfortunately, he himself gets fucked up in the process. It makes for a very worthy opponent to a very worthy hunter that is Wolf. And if you have a
sorry, I was just going to say, I also like how he shows up differently on the Predator's vision. He's orange instead of green.
Like orangey yellow. Whereas like the Xenos are pure green, the Predalien is like this yellowish green orange.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to your point about him being a sadistic bastard, well, he is a xenomorph, and they basically exist to kill in varying forms. So,
and so not only do they exist to kill, but it has the skill and knowledge base and the more sentience of a Yautja to funnel that killing intent into. The one thing that I kind of don't like about the Predalien in this movie is I feel like, because apparently a fully grown Predalien is like 11 feet in height, where like an average Yautja ranges from 7 to 8 feet in height, and like an average xenomorph is like 5 to 6. But you don't really see that much of a height difference between Wolf and the Predalien. There's maybe like a half a foot to maybe a foot difference. So, well, you could say that this Predalien still wasn't done growing, but I just feel like the height difference is a little off, and it would have also, the height difference would have made the Predalien look even more imposing than it already is. But you could say like its sadistic personality makes up for that. But that's my only little issue. I wish he was like a bit taller, but still, the Predalien is fucking badass as shit.
I think the problem there is the fact that he wouldn't have been able to be played by a suit actor, because that was actually the problem with the assassin Predator in the Predator, is they had a practical reference for him, but because of his size, they realized, well, it would be easier to do this as CGI,
i.e., lazier.
So had they done that, the Predalien, probably aside from close-ups, probably would have been all CGI. But anyway.
Pro number 4 is the practical effects in this movie are pretty damn good. Well, despite 2 issues that hinder them, what we have here is very, very, very good. The suitimation looks really good. Wolf's suit is totally seamless. It looks like an actual Yautja walking around killing Xenos. The Xenomorphs look really good too, though. I'll talk about that later. But the Xenomorphs look really good too, and the Predalien looks fantastic. The suit itself looks totally seamless. It looks like a living creature. Yeah, all the practical, and also the suit design, or not suit, but the set designs for the various hives that Wolf comes across throughout the movie look really, really good. Like it looks like something out of Aliens, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. Yeah, not much to say, but whoever did the effects with the money that they had, they were on their A game. This will lead me into pro number 5 is the gore. If you're one of those people that was bitching about the last one being too tame and sterilized, this movie's got you covered because, damn, this movie definitely ups the gore. Actually, aside from The Predator, I'd actually probably say this is the goriest of the entire franchise. There's slime, there's ooze, there's xenomorph blood, there's predator blood, and there's lots of human blood in this movie, and it's gooey carnage candy galore. And it'll definitely scratch your gore itch if you got one.
Yeah, and then third place would probably be Predator 2.
Yep. There's one issue that I have with the gore in this movie, but we'll talk about that when we get to the cons. Pro number 6 is the action scenes in this movie are really good. Mainly, it's Wolf versus all the Xenos. It's very well choreographed. It's very well edited, aside from the darkness. And there's good variety to Wolf's kills. His main one is just blasting them to pieces with his plasma caster, but he's no slouch in close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. He's got the glaives. He's got his combi stick. He's got that fucking whip, which is just, I think it's called a razor whip. But what it does, he like lassos a Xeno, and he just like yanks it, and it slices right through a Xeno like to pieces.
It's supposed to be made out of their tails, I do believe.
Oh, go figure. And the last Xeno that Wolf kills with his whip, it's still kind of like, twitching and screeching around. Wolf just walks up to it and stomps on its skull and splat. He even resorts to punching a Xeno and taking that blue acid and shoving it down its throat and melting it into goo. Wolf certainly ain't no slouch when it comes to his weapons. Another really good gory highlight as well is when Jessie is killed by one of Wolf's glaives. She gets pinned at the waist to a wall, and her lower half just tears and splatters away, and it's awesome. It's an awesome end to an awful character. More on that later. Yeah, overall, and of course, Wolf's fight with the Predalien. I have one issue, and it's a big one, but it's still very entertaining. Wolf tries. He tries so hard to take this thing out. And I will say, I count this more as a win for the Predators in the Alien versus Predator argument. Whereas the last one, technically, the Xenos are the winner in the end. Whereas here, similar to Freddy versus Jason, I count this as Wolf deals the first killing blow before he himself gets one. Though this most recent viewing, I think, had the nuclear strike not gone off, I think he could have survived it because it looked like he was impaled through his upper torso, closer to his shoulder. So I think he potentially could have survived that one. But of course, the nuclear strike came along, and moving on. Overall, the action scenes are very, very entertaining. And they're well done. They're well edited, and they add some good spice to the film. Pro number 7 is like what Trev was saying a lot. This movie definitely is much more favorable to the Yautjas than the first movie was more favored to Aliens. If you are a Predator fan, this movie will scratch your itch because of all the homages and the sound effects and the infrared vision and the skinning of the police officer and Wolf just being a total juggernaut. If you're a Predator fan, this movie's for you. But this will lead me also into my final pro number A, is the Aliens vibe. This movie definitely does really feel like Aliens, like the second Aliens movie. Partially with like the rhino, or not rhino, but elephant peacock screeching sound effect whenever they get killed. There's also the same design with the ridged, ornate head design from Aliens. And just overall, this feels a lot more like Aliens, whereas the first one was more like Alien. Especially with them having the smooth skull design. And I like that this movie does showcase the closest thing to a xenomorph invasion of Earth, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people have been dying to see. It happens in the expanded universe, but still in the future, not in present day. And here it's done very well in a modern day sense. And like what Trev was saying, it does feel like a lot of classic 80s monster movies. And I think it's done very well. Not much to say about the xenomorphs in this movie. They're just here to be the movie's antagonistic monsters. But they certainly do leave a lasting impression because they fuck shit the fuck up. That's all she wrote for pros. What you got, Trev?
Well, to be honest, we actually probably gave this movie a fairer shake than most, so good on that. I have 5 cons as well.
Hang on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cons. I originally had 7.
Well, still, we're pretty much doing a 50-50 for this, which, again, is probably a lot more fair than some people tend to be with it. But yeah, so my first con, and I think that if this was rectified, it would actually make the other stuff more tolerable. It just adds on to it, unfortunately, is the very, very, very poor lighting for the movie.
Okay, so we're going to talk about similar stuff together. Yeah. Why is this movie so damn dark? This is like Friday the 13th, 09, Godzilla 2014, Han Solo levels of dark. What the fuck?
Or The Relic, if you've never seen that.
I have seen that. That movie's damn near unwatchable because it's so damn dark.
Yeah, and a lot of people would say that about this one too. Well, as I've discovered, and you know, people don't have to do this if they don't want to, because you shouldn't have to. I've started messing with the brightness level on the TV, and it does end up helping out a whole lot. You just have to figure out what is not too bright, where it washes everything out. Everybody's TVs are different, but I would say like about 80 or 90 on the brightness level is much better, because usually my TV's set at 50, but that's technical specs. Not a whole lot to say about the lighting other than the fact that it's very poor. I don't know if they were trying, because the Alien franchise is known for having like some darkly lit atmospheres and whatnot.
But there it's done intentional to create a creepy atmosphere. Here, even during the day, it kind of has like this sepia tone, almost like dark filter over the screen, and it's really, really distracting.
And I don't know if this is true or not, but funny enough, I read an article yesterday before we did the review for the first movie. Apparently there were some crew members who weren't happy about some of the decisions that were made. So I'm guessing it had to be the directors, because, I mean, they would be the ones to make that call. But maybe the director of photography, or, you know, I'm not quite sure who made the decision. But the lighting in this movie just, it doesn't help. I mean, okay, some of the better lit scenes in the movie do still retain some atmosphere. But like Nick was saying, they're still, even those are fairly dark. Like they have the sepia tone and whatnot. It's just, again, if this was lit better, all the other cons with the movie, I think, would be forgiven because you could at least see the movie better. As it is, you have a movie that's hard to engage in with the characters. More on that in a second.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and then like the plot problems, which there are some, those things I could forgive if I could actually see the damn thing as well as I would like to. So yeah, that is undoubtedly the biggest problem with this movie, in my opinion. But there are other things that lead into making it worse. And so, in that regard, I'll go on to con number 2: the characters.
Yep, that's my second con too.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Nick, and then I'll give my piece.
The only character in this movie that I do like is Dallas, because he's kind of like Dutch Light, but only Trev made me realize that he's kind of Dutch Light. I just like Dallas because he's really the only one in this movie that you can kind of get behind and follow as a protagonist. And, the dude actually tries to be brave and he tries to kick ass, especially when he starts using Wolf's plasma blaster. He's just like, go, come on, you motherfuckers. And also the epic, fuck you, boom, kill.
There's also the inevitable get to the chopper line,
which I noticed that one on my most recent viewing. But then I never noticed it as being Dutch-like. I just thought he was just saying get to the chopper. But now that Trev mentions it, it is a bit like Dutch. Though it's just that it doesn't have the funny...
Go ahead.
It doesn't have the funny meme aspect that follows Arnold around. Get to the chopper!
I actually didn't. Whenever I was making the comparison with Dutch, I didn't even factor in that line because I, like you, just thought it was a general callback. No, yeah. If you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and say what really reminded me, and this is another sprinkling in of heavy Predator references. What I really noticed is the dynamic between Dallas and Eddie Morales, the sheriff. It does feel a little bit. It's not as well done, obviously, because this is a con. It's not as well done as Dutch and Dylan, but there is this sense that, and Nick actually probably, he refined what I originally thought. I originally thought that Dallas and Eddie grew up together. They were like friends as teenagers and whatnot. But Nick brought up the fact that it's more likely that Eddie, probably was the officer who would, be there whenever Dallas was arrested or something. He would be like in the back of the car, and Eddie would be the one who was driving, or like the partner that was in the car, stuff like that. Because there is a lot. It's an attempt at character stuff, and it does give you an inkling. Dallas does say to Eddie, like whenever he first arrives and they're riding around town in the cop car, I seem to remember you being with me a couple of those times. Back whenever he was being reprimanded. But no, Dallas and Eddie. Eddie ends up being the one who seems like, and this is why I initially thought that they were both delinquents when they were younger. Eddie seems to be the one who has refined himself and kind of pulled himself out of that old life.
Yeah, actually, now I kind of agree with that now that I've rewatched the movie, because he says a line where I have a hard enough time convincing I'm eligible for this job. But I still get the sense that Eddie was a rookie cop, or like a younger cop when Dallas was a juvenile delinquent, because Eddie does come off as being older by at least like 5 to 10 years than Dallas. But now I'm not 100% sure, but I still do think that. But continue.
Well, yeah, and this is why this is a con, is that we really don't know for sure, because it's really just a basic, okay, this is kind of what's going on with these guys, and that's it. But no, what I think of, again, going back to the Dutch Dylan dynamic, is the fact that, okay, so like Dylan used to be one of Dutch's crew, so to speak, and then he ended up becoming a CIA agent, pushing too many pencils. So in this regard, Eddie is now on the side of the law, and it's quite possible that he didn't used to be. So there's a bit of a rift between the two of them now that they've been apart and they've gone separate ways in their life. And again, that ties into Dutch and Dylan. And they also have a moment right before Eddie makes a stupid-ass decision to go to the center of town.
Yeah,
because,
I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, Eddie, we'll see with Dylan and Predator, it was his comeuppance. This is how I'm going to get back my former glory. It's how I'm going to make up. It's how I'm going to make up putting us in this shitty situation. Whenever Dutch handed off the gun to him, and he went off. Whenever Dylan went off to go, help Mac.
And there it was honorable, and it didn't feel forced or stupid.
Yeah. Well, see, and in this, it's not. I don't think it's forced. Maybe it kind of leans on that because the characters aren't as good. And as I was saying, Eddie, unlike Dylan,
is a dumbass.
He makes worse decisions as the movie goes on. And in the original Predator, Dylan slowly, again, was trying to make amends. And in this case, Dallas passes off, I think it was a radio.
Yeah, it was a radio.
Was it the radio? Yeah, he passes off the radio. And you can tell the guys still care about each other. But it's like their final goodbye, which is also what it was for Dutch and Dylan. So long story short, because a bit rambly there, but hopefully everybody was following me. It's a callback as a Predator fan that I can appreciate, even if the characters unfortunately aren't as good as Dutch and Dylan. And just to wrap up, you want to switch off and say some other things, Nick, about some of the other cast?
Well, I'm just going to wrap up on Dallas. Yeah, he's really the only character in this movie that you can really get behind and follow. Not so much at first. He kind of seems like he's there to be a watcher. But once shit starts hitting the fan, that's when he takes control and he finally starts making good decisions that saves people. And he also puts a couple people in their place. Funny to me, why don't we just get out of town? Because they're not going to make it out of town without weapons, dickhead. You're too stupid to talk, Dale. Shut up.
That was...
And also, he, of course, proves himself to be a badass when he starts taking on Xenos by himself. So Dallas is really the only character in this movie that you can get behind as a protagonist, and he's the only one who's really tolerable. The rest of the humans are just either boring, annoying, or unlikable.
Yeah, so let me elaborate if you don't mind, since we're both talking about it.
Eddie.
Yeah, the O'Briens, Kelly and Molly are definitely the brothers' attempt to call back to Ripley and Newt. Unfortunately, they're nowhere near as effective. I see what they're trying to do. And hopefully Ryan or any Godzilla 2014 fans aren't listening, but there's moments in this, particularly with the O'Brien family, where it feels like moments in 2014 where they're trying so hard to make you care about that family dynamic.
And it don't work?
It don't work. I mean, there's something that comes close. There's a scene in the longer version, which we both watched. Kelly just took a shower. She's coming to, love up on her husband Tim, and they're having like a little dialogue exchange, and they kind of imply that Molly was angry that Kelly left to go be in the service, and their relationship hasn't recovered from that. That's a step in the right direction, but again, it's not enough.
Nope. It's the barest minimum.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's actually a neat idea, because it's like, instead of Tim being the guy who's in the service, like the man of the family is the one who was off in the army. It's Kelly who was, which, you don't often see that. See, that has potential for being something you don't often see,
But then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah, they don't do anything with it. There's all these little seeds planted and whatnot. I do like, it's kind of part of the sadistic humor of this movie when Tim gets killed, because it's the classic. There isn't any monster out there or in your closet or whatever. And then in this movie, it actually turns out to be a monster, and it's the worst kind of monster, a xenomorph. So it's kind of sadistically funny in that regard because it flips that trope on
It
its head.
is, yes, but also Tim's death doesn't really have any weight because
No, not at all.
Molly does it a little bit, but Kelly doesn't even seem remotely torn up about Tim's death. Like, you could say that's just the soldier in her taking over, but well, no, you could have just had a moment where she's like driving, where she like her facial expressions kind of slip and she's like about to start crying, but then she kind of like shakes it off and focuses on her job. Even that would have been enough to showcase that, you know, she is too torn up about Tim's death, but she's not. She's just the soldier for the rest of the movie. And in that aspect too, Kelly isn't bad because, well, also she serves a purpose because she knows how to fly the helicopter, which that's another line from Dallas that I like. No matter what, when we get into this hospital, we all protect Kelly. And then this douchebag Drew says, "What is this, Titanic? Screw the women and children first shit, man. Hey, listen, asshole, unless you know how to fly the helicopter, shut the fuck up." Love it. But
yes.
The thing with Kelly is, yeah, she's trying to be Ripley, but she doesn't have the charisma. She's just a plot device.
See, that's the problem. I've actually seen a lot of these actors, like on TV.
She's in 24. The actress who plays Kelly, it was on 24 a lot.
And the actor who played Dallas, he popped up on The Good Wife at one point. He was rocking a mullet in that. Yeah. So a lot of these people are TV actors, but unfortunately, and you know, I was kind of squeamish about my comparison to 2014, but I mean, I actually see a lot of them, like with the lighting and the characters not really connecting. But unfortunately, this movie also doesn't have a Bryan Cranston, because he actually added some charisma to the character of Joe in Godzilla.
Well, I think Dallas comes close, which is fair.
Yeah, you've actually convinced me. Yeah, Dallas by far, and it's a good thing that he's technically the lead. Dallas by far, the stuff done with him is the best. The less said about what's going on with Ricky and Jesse, the better.
Well, no, because I'm going to talk about it. Ricky is this unlikable, whiny prick of a little bitch.
Yeah.
And Jessie is more useless than tits on a bowl. All she does is scream and whine and complain the whole time, and also be something for the horny dudes to ogle. Which,
yeah, pretty much.
These movies never really needed that kind of shit.
No, but then again, it's tapping into that whole 80s monster movie thing. Like
True, yeah.
Return of the Living Dead has that a little bit too. I see what they were going for. This movie just doesn't ever reach them. Okay, and I have one more thing to say about him before we move on, but do you have anything else to say?
And then we finally come to Eddie.
Oh, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and talk about Eddie.
Oh. See, in the first act, he's not bad, because, you know, he's kind of sympathetic. He comes off a little bit like Chief Brody from the original Jaws, where you can tell he's kind of new to the sheriff position, and he's still wet behind the ears, and he hasn't fully gained the town's trust as a sheriff. And you can see that when shit starts to hit the fan, he's like trying to keep shit together, and he's trying to not really assert his authority, but like show and prove himself that he is capable of handling a crisis. But then his character starts going downhill when he starts making dumb-ass decisions. And he starts becoming the dumb fuck of the movie. Because he's the one who...
They're just like the dumbest of decisions.
Huh?
They're just like the dumbest of decisions. Like, why would you think that?
Why would you wholeheartedly believe the government has a plan to rescue all of you that is at the center of town? What do they aim at the center of town?
Nukes.
Yep.
Exactly. And See, I can see a character like Darcy thinking that because she kind of comes across as the sheltered little towns lady.
Yep.
But Eddie, I mean, he's a cop. I mean, he has to have some kind of a sheriff. He has to have some kind of insight into like some kind of government practices, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I was kind of following Eddie for the first 2 acts, but then when he starts going downhill and he clashes with Dallas, that's where I'm just like, this character could just die. I do like his shotgun, though, which looks a lot like this gun. But other than that, yeah, Eddie's a total idiot.
Yeah, okay, so pretty much everybody else is here just to be killed. And even some of the people that we've mentioned do end up being killed, whether by a xenomorph, a predator, or a nuke.
Or their own stupidity.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think any of the main ones that we talked about get killed by a xeno, but Jesse gets cleaved by the glaive, for sure.
Well, there's also Dale, who gets his face melted.
Yeah, I didn't even think about him because he's just asshole number 20 among many others, but, you know. So yeah, I guess to wrap up the bit about the characters, there are some neat little bits of trivia with some of the actors in this, even though I'm sure they're probably not proud of this movie. The actor who plays Eddie, John Ortiz, he's actually in the Monsterverse as a character in Skull Island. He's the one who gets picked apart by the Leaf Wings.
Oh, is that what those are called?
Yeah, Leaf Wings. Yeah, he's kind of the wimpy. I forgot what his job was. He was some kind of grapher or something. He was part of the seismology. Crap, I need to watch Skull Island again. But anyway, yeah, the actor John Ortiz. He's also in Skull Island. There's also a guy who's just kind of xenomorph fodder in here. Nate, the power plant guy. He also is there whenever they're searching for the missing hunter and his son. The actor who played Nate, Ty Olson, he played a character in Supernatural, a vampire apparently, Benny. Are you a fan of Supernatural, Nick?
I tried to get into Supernatural, but it just didn't really hold my interest. It didn't help that the 4th episode of the first season takes place at an airport, and it didn't look interesting at all, which is why me and Meadow just decided to kind of quit on watching the show. But I respect that it's one of the longest lasting pseudo superhero shows in existence.
Oh yeah. Well, to wrap up this point, apparently he was a character in that. He also, and I'm bringing this up because he's to have a creature feature trend in his filmography. He was in Lake Placid. He was in Dreamcatcher, Willard. He also does some voice work. Apparently, he did some G.I. Joe cartoons. He was in the Chronicles of Riddick. And the big one here is that he was also in the Monsterverse. In Godzilla 2014, he was one of the scientist characters at the Janjira power plant. Right before the male Muto hatches, he's talking about how the echolocation is affecting their gear and whatnot. He's saying there's like a new trend in the curve and whatnot. That guy is one of the guys who gets killed by a xenomorph in this. So it's also he's apparently in some of the new Planet of the Apes movies. So he's a character actor that if you're like paying attention, you'll probably notice him. He's also done some voice work and whatnot. But I just thought it was neat because I always think connections like that are fascinating. But anyway, we've said enough about the fact that these characters are very, very lacking, unfortunately. Even though there is some potential there. There are seeds planted, but nothing ever sprouts. So, moving on.
Yep.
Con number 3, and actually this factors into the characters, the script is in need of some work.
Well, my next con number 3 is the acting needs some work. Aside from Dallas,
yes.
Again, and kind of to an extent Eddie, he's not a bad actor, But the rest of the acting in this movie is really cringy. A lot of the dialogue, it's mainly actually with Jesse and Ricky, because get this fucking bullshit Cobra Kai season 2 teenage drama bullshit out of my goddamn Alien versus Predator film. Fuck off.
Or even if it's going to be there, because again, this movie is very derivative of the Blob, and there's some teenage stuff in that, but it's entertaining. That's the whole thing, is that if you took another one or two, I would say probably two is more likely, if you took another couple of passes at this script, or actually had some other writers to help Shane Salerno out, because he was actually also one of the writers for AVP, but as I mentioned yesterday, obviously all the other writers for that movie are why it was better. Just have somebody come in and help them out. And, the script and the acting kind of go hand in hand, because the script is what the actors are working off of. And again, we've seen some of these people pop up in other stuff, and I found them to be competent. So, again, when it comes to actors, an actor is only as good as their director and their script. So if those things are lacking, and unless you're like a well-accomplished actor who's been in the business forever, unfortunately, your performance is gonna be lacking if you don't have that guidance. So to go hand in hand with what Nick was saying, the acting is subpar, and that's because the script is as well. So I really wish this had been on the level of the Blob remake, because then it would probably be talked about a little bit more fondly. Okay, and then my fourth con, Nick already said that some of this works to this movie's benefit, and it balances out what didn't work about the first one. But I do feel this goes a little bit too overboard with its R rating. So I wrote down it's excessively R rated to compensate for what wasn't in the first one. And I mainly bring this up for like the mean-spiritedness.
So I'm going to talk about that too. Con number 4 for me is mainly, well, 1 is the impregnation of the child at the beginning, but 4 is the whole hospital impregnating pregnant women stuff. This affects me a bit more because I myself am about to be a father, so I can only imagine how fucking fucked up that's got to be to actually have happen to someone who is pregnant, to have a bunch of Xenos forced down their throat and have their baby eaten out by Xenos. But I just found that to be in really bad taste. And it was very mean-spirited and just a little too extreme for my tastes.
The funny thing... Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I just really found that to be very unnecessary. Like, why did it have to specifically be pregnant chicks? Why couldn't the... like, if the Predalien wanted to be sadistic and only target women... But why specifically pregnant women? Why couldn't it just been random women? Because I didn't know that. Because when I was a kid, that's what I thought that he was doing. Like, and he just came across the hospital just for convenience. But on my most recent viewing, I noticed that Carrie was also pregnant because I saw her little baby bump earlier in the film, and I was like, oh, okay, he is actually just going after pregnant chicks. So
one could say,
I just really found that to be in bad taste and just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
No, I got you. One could say that there's always been a theme of anxiety when it comes to pregnant women related to the Alien franchise, although it's like the worst kind of version of childbirth is the chest burster. But this is a version of it that's fairly tasteless. It kind of, again, it takes it into a exploitation territory. And again, that and the fact that the little kid, Sam, at the start, he gets face hugged. It just all feels like it's going just out of its way to address. It's almost like the attitude was, okay, well, you thought the last movie was too gentrified and, as I've said more than once, sanitized. Well, we're just going to go hard right and just pepper this with as much obscene violence as we can put in there.
Which, that's all well and good, but leave the kids and the pregnant gals alone, man. Jeez.
Well, it's like you always say, or they always say, if you kill a dog, you'll lose the audience. I think that also applies to kids as well. So again, that just adds to working against what works about this movie, because again, what works about the movie is the R rating, which we missed to some extent. We were very favorable for AVP. We don't mind, even if it's still a con, that it's a PG-13.
It's not a big con.
No, it's not. Yeah, this is a step in the quote unquote right direction, but then it just goes over the cliff.
Yep.
So yeah. So excessive violence, in addition to not being able to see the movie or the characters not resonating, it just adds on to the problems. And finally, my last con, and actually, I'm not going to dwell on it too much because I've already kind of gone into it, but this wraps it all up. It doesn't do its B-movie plot any favors. When you're poorly lit, when your characters feel like they're in a sci-fi channel original movie or some low-budget thing, whenever you're kind of trashy and exploitation-like, even if you have a plot that has potential, because again, The Blob, Return of the Living Dead, those are 80s movies that I think they were trying to channel here, but all these other cons that I've mentioned thus far, they work against letting this plot work. And so ultimately, that's why half of this movie, at least, kind of just falls apart. So yeah, that's my last con.
So con number 5 for me, what he was mentioning, is I think the fact that this had a lower budget does hurt it slightly. The practical effects are really good. I find it's the digital stuff that now is finally starting to suffer. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot of CG. Well, all the gore pretty much is CGI, and because it's poorly lit, at least you don't see it. But at least I can still tell that it's CGI, and from what I can see, it's not very well animated. All the face huggers are CGI, and they don't look that great. Like, the one that really stuck out to me was when all the face huggers went into the sewers, and it was like a shot of a grate that you could see the sky, and it was like in setting sun, and you could see the face hugger crawling out. I found that to be really noticeably not very well animated. And also, like I said, all the human gore is all CG. Kind of reminds me, I only say this because it came out the same year. It reminds me of Diary of the Dead, where all the gore in that film is computer generated. But oddly, it looks even better there because you had some talented directors and special effects guys. Here, you have talented practical special effects guys. And in the CGI, you can definitely tell that this movie had a lower budget.
Yeah.
Con number 6 is go ahead.
Which is funny because AVP was a success, so why not let the sequel have a good budget? Anyway.
Well, this movie was still somewhat of a success because it grossed $130 against the $40 million budget, but that still is a downgrade from the $60 to $80 million grossing $170 million from the previous film. But con number 6 for me is the imbalanced pacing. This actually goes hand in hand with the next con. I feel like this movie does have Sinister 2 syndrome. Because the human characters are so shitty and so lacking, it feels like its own separate story that's running parallel to all the stuff that's going on with Wolf, which is the far more interesting stuff and the stuff that you want to focus on more. But unfortunately, kind of like with Godzilla 2014, the movie tries to focus so hard on these human characters that don't work. It detracts from the film, and it also detracts from the stuff that you do want to see.
Yep.
I
concur.
con number 8 is, this is kind of simple. There's just not enough of Wolf, and just in general, even as a kid, despite Wolf being a total badass, I wish there was at least one more Predator in this movie. Like, you could have had the return of Scar and have this be an extension of his becoming a man, and having Scar be like his mentor. But it's not a huge deal because Wolf is such a badass. He kind of makes up for that. But as a Predator fan, and especially with them teasing the Predator home world, I wish there was just a bit more Predator stuff in this film. And my final con is the final fight between Wolf and the Predalien. It's cool, but it's still a little one-sided because this whole movie is spent with Wolf being such a juggernaut to xenomorphs that you, and especially with him acknowledging and like being very obviously trying to take down the Predalien, you'd think he'd have experience taking down Predaliens, but watching him get manhandled so easily, like for the up until the final act, every single time the Predalien and Wolf meet, the first thing that the Predalien does is just send Wolf flying with a tail smack. And then at the end, Wolf just gets the living shit beaten out of him by the Predalien. It's just a bit sad. Now, it's better when he rips off his mask and gives you a really good hoo-yah badass moment. But even still, and he does deliver, in my eyes, the final killing blow. And also that they kind of pulled the generic, like what the public eye perceives as a typical crossover versus outcome of a fight where they both die and it's kind of left ambiguous and vague ending. Like, this is worse than Freddy versus Jason, in my opinion. Where you don't really know who's the winner. It's kind of just left up to the viewer's interpretation. So yeah, the final fight's very imbalanced, and it's just kind of, it's cool, it's entertaining to watch, but I just wish that Wolf got like, if Wolf was able to like cut off one of the Predalien's arms and like give him some slashes and gouges throughout his body before he delivers the killing blow. But as it currently stands, all Wolf does is rip off his inner jaw and impale him through the head, which is badass, but I just feel like it's a little too lacking. But yeah, that's all my cons with AVPR. Final thoughts, Trev?
Oh, I will say just a little bit on that last point that you made. You could say that Wolf isn't necessarily a veteran when it comes to encountering Predaliens, but he has killed xenomorphs before. So I think that might be something they're trying to convey, is the fact that even though Predaliens are something that the Yacht should know about and obviously consider an abomination, they would be inclined. Well, I mean, not inclined. He's probably never encountered one before. At least that's what I would say to counter that, perhaps. And that's why he is constantly bested. But as you also said in that final fight, he does do his damnedest to finally put the killing blow on him. And also, now that GVK has come out, so that we can be timely with our review and trendy, you could say that that movie is the one that finally broke the mold, where it wasn't left ambiguous for fear of angering either fan base, because that's going to happen anyway.
Well, it definitely now is happening, because now there's finally angry, butthurt Kong fanboys that are bitching and moaning and trying to boycott Godzilla vs. Kong, because Godzilla is the superior monster and the winner in that movie.
Why can't they just be happy and realize that both monsters were serviced well?
Because angry butthurt fanboys like to bitch and moan when they don't get exactly what they want, like Star Wars fans.
Yeah, and it's like the logical outcome, but whatever. Okay, before I give my rating and final thoughts, just one more little bit of trivia, or two actually. The cook in this movie, they wanted Bill Paxton to play him. I can actually understand why he didn't end up doing it if he read the script. But the cook that gets his spine ripped out by the Predalien was supposed to be Bill Paxton originally. And Colonel Stevens, who ends up making the decision to drop the nuke on Gunnison, Colonel Stevens, they originally wanted that character to be
Garber.
What was Garber? Yes, from Predator 2, played by Adam Baldwin, no relation to Alec. Yeah, so that would have been fun. Just some other nice little tidbits added in
Which
there.
also
But,
would have,
okay.
which would have, well, no, I wouldn't have, because they would have been playing different characters, but would have more firmly cemented that these movies are set in the Predator continuity more than the Alien continuity. But whatever, I still say they are.
If he had come back, he probably wouldn't have been Colonel Stevens. He would have just been Garber. That was the thing, is that the actor had to agree, and then they could do it. But So, real quick, do you want to bring up what the general idea for the next movie was going to be before we wrap up?
You can briefly. I don't really know much about it. I know that there was a third movie planned, but because the reception to this one was so mixed and harsh, that Fox just pussied out.
Yeah, so there's not much known about it except that it would have delivered upon the setting that fans seem to really want, which is to take it out into space. There would be colonial marines involved. They would have actually gone to, at that point, before Ridley Scott came back and started doing his prequel elements, they would have actually gone to the alien homeworld. We would have actually seen more of the Predator homeworld. And there apparently would have been a king alien in there, and it would have had wings.
Oh, so, cool.
That sounds cool, but at the same time, batshit crazy.
Who cares?
I kind of wanted to see this, but I think I would have really wanted them to have had a different scriptwriter, because maybe the Brothers Strauss would have been okay if they had a competent script to work with. But anyway, that's one of those things we'll never know, but those are just some neat little tidbits that, are left to your imagination. So any thoughts on that, Nick?
Oh, that does sound cool. It would have been a better movie than this in its current state, but, with the two strikes that the Strauss brothers got, obviously that never came to fruition. But, well, maybe with the Thomas brothers, hopefully their campaign against suing Disney to get the Predator rights back and will succeed, and they can breathe some life into this project. But as it currently stands, it's just one of those cool what-if scenarios.
Well,
and hang on, I want to make one last thing. I will say that, with all of this fan service stuff, and it's obvious that the Brother Strauss are Predator fans, and also with this movie having a lower budget, I gotta say that this movie really comes off as just being a big budget mainstream fan film, rather than it is a legit movie, obviously, but it comes off a bit more as like a big budget fan film. Which, if it was, this probably would be the greatest fan film ever made, like eclipsing the bullshit that was Phantasm Ravager, but it was a legit theatrical film, and that's why it's not so highly regarded.
Oh yeah, for sure. I will say, I guess I'll just say this: the way a lot of people critique King of the Monsters as being like a poor fan film, I think unfortunately this movie leans more into being more on par with what those complaints.
To which those people who do say that about King of the Monsters, go sit in your angry masturbation corner and duct tape your mouth shut, because nobody wants to hear your shitty opinions. Continue.
Exactly. And also, one final note, because this is current news, I hope if the Thomas brothers gain some leeway, they allow Dan Trachtenberg, who directed 10 Cloverfield Lane and is the guy who's going to be directing the new Predator, I hope they are willing to work with him and see his idea come to fruition if they can work something out. But as for this movie, my final thoughts, I am definitely a devil's advocate for this, but I will say for newcomers, if you're going through the Alien and Predator movies, if there's something about Predator 2 that you didn't find favorable, or if you didn't like Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection, because they did kind of put us on the path to stuff that we see in this, like the cloning stuff in Resurrection with Ripley is, in my opinion, kind of disturbing. And then like the xenomorphs eating the infants and the pregnant women, that's kind of along the same lines, at least for me. It also has a bit of a grungy, unsavory attitude about it, like Alien 3. But the difference is that Alien 3 and Resurrection are actually competently written and made films overall. But there are inklings there. What I'm saying is that if you're going through the franchise for the first time, and there's anything after Aliens or the original Predator that you don't like, unfortunately, this movie doubles down on it in the worst possible way, I would say. So unless you've become like a hardcore fan, this is for hardcore fans only, and even then, you have to be a very forgiving viewer.
Yep.
And in that regard, the final note on this is a very generous rating for this movie. I'll give it a 6.
Yeah, I feel like if you are a hardcore both Alien and Predator fan, like I do feel like this movie was made for those who are both hardcore Alien and Predator fans. If you're one but not the other, or you favor one over the other, this movie is going to feel very lacking for you. Thankfully, I'm one of those individuals who is lucky as far as I'm concerned, and I like both Alien and Predator equally, even though I do favor the Predator series just because they're easier to watch.
And this movie has your back in that regard.
You kind of have to be in a certain mood to watch the Alien series because that deals with a lot of heavy and dark, disturbing shit.
Stuff.
Yeah, I kind of want to be a devil's advocate for Alien versus Predator Requiem. There are things here that it's kind of like how I view this movie similar how James Rolfe views Exorcist 3. When it's good, it's good. I'd almost say it's phenomenal. But the things about this that are bad are so bad that it almost eclipses the stuff that's good. So it's an extremely mixed bag type of film, which is why I will also be giving Alien vs. Predator Requiem a 6 out of 10. I considered a 7, but upon this most recent viewing, really it was the whole bad taste pregnancy shit that cemented this movie's fate for me. But yeah, I think a 6 out of 10 is slightly generous because, like I said, the stuff here that is good is really good, but the stuff that's bad is really bad.
Yeah, I concur.
Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think, and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. Look forward to Trev's collaboration with Daikaiju Spacezilla, which will be coming out sometime soon. And also go check out Trev on the Fictosphere if it's still up.
Yeah, it's still up.
And also go check out Trev's YouTube channel, which he needs to get on.
Yeah, someday. It exists. It's out there. You can find it.
And look forward to tomorrow as we delve even deeper down the bad rabbit hole of this series for a film that I like even less than this, when we talk about Robert Rodriguez's 2010 Predators. Look forward to that. And as always, go out and be an unstoppable juggernaut for a bunch of giant space ants. But just stick to that. Don't indulge in your serial killer tendencies. And I will see you guys in the next video.